appears that Sarkozy's lawyers will appeal. We're hearing that this investigating judge who was working on the case believes that Sarkozy and his election campaign, his re-election campaign, which was eventually unsuccessful, believes there's enough evidence to show that there was illegal, fraudulent funding going on during that campaign. Now, basically, the accusation is this. Pygmalion, and in France this is known as the Pygmalion affair. Pygmalion was a communications company charged with doing the communications work for Sarkozy's re-election bid in 2012. Now, Pygmalion, according to the evidence and what's being suggested here, what it's accused of, falsified receipts for the work it was doing for Sarkozy's re-election campaign, and charged the UMP party, that's Sarkozy's party, which is of course now called the Républicains. Sarkozy renamed it himself. And so that basically meant that up to 18 million euros over the legal limit of how much a candidate can spend on their election campaign was spent on Sarkozy's election bid, when actually it was billed to the party. So it was a clever accounting technique which was illegal if it actually took place. And Sarkozy says he was not aware at all. No one made him aware that he was A, overspending, and B, that these kinds of accounting techniques are going on. Of course, this would be bad news. Sarkozy, if he were to be put on trial, he would be only the second former president in France of the Fifth Republic to ever get put on trial here in France. The first being, of course, Jacques Chirac, who was put on trial and convicted of fraud and corruption from his time when he was mayor of Paris.
Okay, so it's quite a complicated story.
Very complicated
this
story.
This discrepancy between what was actually spent and what this communications company said they spent. So yeah, I mean, and if it's proven correct, obviously he breached the rules amount.
If it's proven correct, of course, he denies that, and he denies any wrongdoing. He denies any knowledge at all.
Okay, and as you said there, there has been another French president in the past who's had to face justice. And we're seeing a bit of a trend here, aren't we, in France at the moment, because there is an awful lot of, a number of spotlights shining on prominent French politicians, with a lot of questions being asked about where certain sums of money went, or this fake job drama that continues to unravel here in France.
Absolutely, no, you've hit the nail on the head. There seems to be in the last perhaps 10, 15 years, a change in the relationship between politicians and the justice system here in France. Sarkozy is not alone in having been embroiled in legal affairs. He's certainly the most notorious, and that's partly because in 2012 he didn't win the election bid, which meant he lost his presidential immunity, and that's why all of these affairs, there's around a dozen of them, most of them involving money, have come out and are chasing around him, and his lawyers are keeping very, very busy. But he's not alone. We saw just a month ago Jérôme Cahuzac, former budget minister for François Hollande this time. He was convicted. 3-year prison sentence he got for tax evasion. He was storing money in Switzerland and not paying taxes on it. We also saw just a couple of weeks ago Claude Guéant, a close ally of Sarkozy. He's chief of staff at one point, former interior minister. He was convicted and given a 2-year prison sentence, 1 year of which was a suspended sentence. He was convicted of using money that was destined for the police force and paying bonuses to political allies. Of course, we've also got Fillon. Fillon is not yet under a criminal investigation. Magistrates are working on the case, working out whether they will put him under investigation or whether he will face trial. But it does seem to be a trend. I mean, Fillon actually said just yesterday at his meeting, when he spoke to press, he took press questions about his wife and whether or not she actually worked for him and whether or not she had a fake job. Of course, he says she did work for him. Fillon said, well, remember, I'm a politician with 30 years of experience. Perhaps I've had some difficulties adapting to what he called changes, evolutions in society. So it's as if, we have politicians now in their 50s and 60s who are perhaps not quite used to this new relationship that's with politicians and the justice system here now in France.